you're in a state that encourages you to second guess yourself, and you don't want to do that.
Ali, welcome back to the MCAT podcast. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's great to be back here. I love
back.
the podcast.
It's good to have you back. We are throwing you into the fire, feet first, into the Blueprint MCAT half-length diagnostic, which everyone gets for free at blueprintmcat.com. Go get a free account.
Yes, yeah.
We are in the Psych Soc section, passage 2. Let me ask you a basic question before we jump in. When you switch between passages as you are going through a full length, the real thing, whatever it is, what is your general recommendation?
Great question. I have a couple of questions.
I have to flush all of that out of my head, everything that I just went through with that last passage or that last kind of discrete section, and I'm jumping into this new passage. Do you have like a little breathing exercise, a little meditation, a little mantra? What do you recommend students do in between these passages?
Yeah, it's definitely harder on cars than the sciences because like you might get 2 passages in a row with similar topics on the sciences. But my general rule is I take like a very short break between passages and a longer one every 2 passages. So, and it could be something as basic as close your eyes or take your eyes and look at something distant. Look at the wall behind the screen. And this can like relieve the tension in your eyes, take a few deep breaths, forget about the passage. Think about nothing, and this is one of the hardest things to do, but and then go back. And it's only like 5 seconds. And this 5 seconds is extremely valuable in just like refocusing away from one passage so that you can start a new one.
Yeah. Think of nothing. That's very easy to do on the MCAT day when your life is in the hands of the AAMC gods. Got it. All right. Think of nothing. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump in again for everyone watching, listening. You get the Blueprint MCAT half-length diagnostic for free over at blueprintmcat.com.
Yeah. So we have passage 2. Let's start by reading the passage. And what I like to do here is I will scroll down a bit and up, just figure out what type of passage is this. Do I have figures? Do I have results? Is this an experimental research style passage or just a textbook style passage?
Yeah, it looks like a wall of text here.
Yeah, it looks like a wall of text. And how would you approach a passage like this one? Would you rather spend more time on the passage or on the questions on a wall of text type of passage?
I would start with some tears, knowing that I'm a very slow reader, and I would cry going, this is going to take too much time. I would start with that, and then I would probably, my general thought is just let's read the text.
Yeah, let's go through it. Don't dwell on the super small details. The text is here. It's not going to go anywhere when you're answering the questions. So you don't need to memorize everything. Just know what everything is and see if you can use it to answer the questions.
Okay.
All right. So let's get started with the first paragraph. And we'll read I read paragraph by paragraph and I look at like general ideas rather than specific ideas sentence by sentence.
Okay.
So outreach workers communicating with Black and Latino women face challenges in changing behavior with respect to HIV and AIDS transmission. The most important is the apparent perception by minority women that AIDS is a gay white man's problem. From 1989 to 1995, AIDS cases among women is expected to increase 300 to 500%. Among women who contract AIDS through sexual activity, 77% are Black or Latina. Among intravenous IV drug users, the prevalence rate is nearly 50%. Among women in this category, 80% are Black or Latina. Yet, when surveyed, minority women at all socioeconomic levels downplay the risk that AIDS poses. A survey of Black college students, women revealed less than 1/4 insist that their partners use condoms, despite universal knowledge that condoms reduce the spread of AIDS. All right, so we went into this paragraph and we are thrown into like a ton of statistics here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the idea in here is what's important, and we're going to look at this as a background paragraph. So if you're a student taking this passage, what's the main issue in here that all of this statistics is trying to highlight?
For me, the thing that stand out is this second sentence is that the perception by minority women is that it's not their problem.
Perfect. Yes. So, and that's the sentence I would highlight. Like I tend to, minimal highlighting. That's the idea. The statistics stand out. If I'm looking for any questions about the statistics given, the support given in the passage, I can always go find it. But science passages in general start by framing the general issue. And we're going to narrow it down in the next two paragraphs. So I will focus more on the new information rather than the existing information.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's keep going. So poor minority women who live outside the law due to prostitution or drug use have always lived with risk. They prioritize time and attention on the risk of AIDS relative to other concerns such as protecting their children, securing financial resources, and simply acquiring basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter. Interviewees in temporary women's housing expressed helplessness about changing their external circumstances, dooming outreach efforts based on proactive efforts may be made by these women. All right, a lot of like small ideas in this paragraph that connect to outside content. And this is one of the things that you build as you study for the MCAT is you recognize testable content on the test. So for me, like a couple stand out, like helplessness. I'm going to go and highlight this because expressed helplessness or learned helplessness is a concept that is tested on the MCAT. So there might be a question here. I want to highlight it. The other thing is the priorities. So we have kind of like a hierarchy of what we need, and I'm foreshadowing the questions in here. But like we need food and shelter first before we look at other needs we have, like protecting ourselves against AIDS. So I like, prioritize excellent. And specifically, I would just like focus on protecting children, securing financial resources, and basic needs such as food and clothing and shelter. So this might show up in questions.
Yep. Okay.
All right, let's keep on moving. Ignoring relevant cultural context means that simplistic government messages, examples of just say no, must fail because they ignore the reality in which AIDS is spread. So I'm going to stop here for a second. And you can see that the passage is narrowing. We started with like women, minority women in general, they are under like a much higher risk of contracting AIDS. And now I narrowed it down to like specifically the government outreach is not working for these women. So now I'm going to get ideas that I might not have studied for the MCAT, like new things that this paper or this research is getting into. Let's see. Among IV users, a network of surprisingly tight-knit communities exists in which users provide both emotional and tangible support for one another. Such communities have their own values, roles, and status markers. Outreach workers must recognize that needle sharing, while bad, is a form of social support that exists in all social networks. When attempting to get women to insist that partners use condoms to reduce sexual spread of HIV, outreach workers must recognize that in some minority communities, especially traditional Catholic Latino communities, women are not expected to take control of sexual situations and decisions. Simply walking to a store and purchasing condoms risks no small amount of social censure for being seen as a loose woman. All right, a lot of information in our last paragraph. And did anything stand out to you as like I've seen this in content, or this might fall under a category I'm expected to know for them?
Ooh, I don't know if any one specific thing stands out. Going, I know that. other than just the broad message that cultures are different and we need to understand that.
Yes, yeah. And you would be surprised like how underrated this topic of demographics and social stratification is important to the MCAT.
Okay.
We'll see later when we discuss the question. The questions in here are foundational concept 9 about demographics or foundational concept 10 about social stratification. And these are like a guaranteed 7 to 11 questions on every single MCAT. So it's just like 2 out of 10 total foundational concepts on the entire MCAT or this topic.
Okay.
So I would see support structures, social structure or social support in here is an important concept, might show up in the questions.
Yep.
So emotional and tangible support. Perfect. I will look at exactly what you said. Cultures are different. So this is a subculture of drug users or sharing needles that they have their own values. So communities having their own values, exactly what you said, extremely important. And I will look at the last part of the paragraph 2 is how traditional Catholic Latino communities are also different just because women in these communities feel more pressure at not taking charge of their sexual situation or sexual decisions. We don't need to over highlight in here. What you're highlighting is perfect and will help us find the information we need to answer questions.
Okay.
All right. So
that's kind of scary because it's a relatively straightforward passage, and I think history has shown that relatively straightforward passage equals really, really hard questions.
Yeah. And like whenever the situation is specific, the type of question we expect, we see it on ChemPhys, on BioChem, but we see it a lot more on PsychSoc of take this specific situation and put it under a general category that you memorize for the MCAT.
Okay.
So, and on these textbook style passages, these are the most prevalent questions because there is no experiment for me to analyze.
Yeah.
So less skill 3 and skill 4 questions here.
Okay. All right, so I'll start with question number 7. Which of the following best explains the decisions on priority made by women who live outside the law? And so I'm going to go straight to where we highlighted prioritize.
Awesome.
And so this is a very basic, right? They're focused on basic needs, food, clothing, shelter. And to me, when we prioritize basic needs, that screams Maslow's hierarchy. So
love it.
Let me go see if we can find that answer. And it is answer choice D, and I'm not even going to look at the other ones. I just hope that Maslow's hierarchy is going to save me there.
Okay, I'm like, I think you're underrating yourself. Not hope, like it's like you predicted Maslow's hierarchy, and I think the way you approach this question is exactly how we want our students to approach this question. Read the question, refer back to the passage if you need to. In this case, we do need to because it's a specific question from the passage. Then formulate a prediction, like a general idea of where we're going with this. So we have basic needs come at the expense of higher needs. That's just the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The bottom one is like food and shelter and water. And that's what we have here in the passage. Yep. Then Maslow stands out. You click Maslow, you move on. And I love that you skipped over A, B, and C. One of the biggest mistakes our students make is like, oh, let me read A. Maybe A makes sense. Let me try to evaluate B. Does Kohlberg apply in here? Let me try to think about this. And now you're kind of hurting yourself on 2 fronts. You're taking time away from other questions, and you might talk yourself into a wrong answer. So you want to avoid both of these situations. Just click Maslow, move on. Time to go to question 8.
Yeah. All right. Love it. Question 8. Go ahead and read this one.
All right. The women's housing interviewees discussed in the passage most likely lack. All right, so let's go and find where are the women's housing interviewees discussed in the passage. We can look around our highlights, and it's one of our highlights, actually. It's the helplessness that we highlighted in paragraph 2. interviewees in temporary women's housing expressed helplessness.
Yep.
And again, this is one of the things that as a student, you're taking the diagnostic test. You might not like have this experience yet, but by the time you're taking your 8th, 9th, or 10th full-length exam, you can pick up these small clues from the passage. Oh, helplessness highlight might show up in a question.
Yep.
All right, so let's try to think about this. Like, what do they lack? If I don't look at the answer choices, this might be a bit difficult to come up with a prediction, but we can cheat and scan the answer choices quickly.
Yep.
So self-esteem, self-efficacy, self-worth. Okay, so I want to categorize like what is helplessness tied to, or learned helplessness tied to? Is it self-esteem, self-efficacy, and or self-worth, or understanding of like what AIDS is sexually transmitted?
Yeah.
So this is where you need to know the content. So this is one of the questions we talked about earlier, categorizing the specific situation into the content you have memorized. So
yeah. So for me, when I'm looking at this, when I think self-esteem, or not self-esteem, when I think helplessness, and I don't know if this comes from just being on this planet for many years and just kind of learning this along the way, or if this is some psychology stuff still stuck in my head. When I think helplessness, the big thing that I think about is, and I can't think of the right word, but it's basically autonomy, right? We don't have the ability to do things ourselves, so we feel helpless. So I go to self-efficacy here as an answer choice. Self-esteem, great. Like I can be the most successful person in the world and be on cloud nine and everything's going great and still have terrible self-esteem. So I'm not sure how those two are related. Self-worth, I think, is very similar to self-esteem. So
true.
I'm going to cancel those two out because they're too similar.
That's a great strategy,
and I'm just going to throw it out. Answer choice D, I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. So I'm just going to throw that out. Like, I'm not helpless because I don't understand that HIV or AIDS is sexually transmitted. I'm helpless because of the situation I'm in and because I don't feel like I have any control. And so to me, that goes to self-efficacy. So I'm going to go with B.
That is excellent. Yes, B is our correct answer here. This is specifically about your ability to control your environment or to finish a task. So B is our correct answer. And I love what you said about self-esteem and self-worth, because these can be true in this situation, but they're not necessarily true in this situation.
Yep.
This is how AMC can get us sometimes, where an answer choice, well, we're talking about women who are suffering from like cultural oppression or inability to treat or avoid AIDS, inability to take control of their situation. Might they have low self-esteem? Probably. But do we have evidence to tell me like they have low self-esteem? No. So we're looking for something that's necessarily true based on the information in the passage. So try not to think too far away from the question or from the passage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Question 9. So when we look here, the next question, a person who is well known in his local subculture of IV drug users is highly regarded by his fellow addicts and receives support in the manner mentioned in the passage. This support is best described as. All right, so without reading the answer choices, I'm going to go down to our cultural contexts where we talked about IV drug users. And it talked about in this community, they have their own values, roles, status markers. And when these workers are out there, they're recognizing this and hopefully supporting in that context. So I'm hopefully going to find an answer choice that aligns with the support is kind of recognizing differences in subcultures and stuff. So we'll see. Answer choice A, cultural capital. Okay, sounds interesting. I like it, maybe, potentially. Answer choice B, social capital. Okay. Answer choice C, an instance of social reproduction. I have no idea what that means, but doesn't sound like anything to do with what we're talking about. So I'm just going to strike this one out because I'm like, I don't think that's it. Or answer choice D, deviance from the majority culture, but a norm in the subculture. All right. So this is exactly what I was just saying is, hey, in this IV drug user world, they have different subcultures, and the inner workings of that subculture may be different than the majority culture. And so I'm going to double check and make sure that this wording is right, because this could be a red herring to go, haha, we got you.
Yeah.
So deviance, I'm not sure what the word deviance means. Like, I'm assuming it's a derivative of deviation, right? It's a difference, but so for me, my vocabulary is not very good, and so for all of the ESL students out there, I feel ya. So I'm going to say it's a difference, right? I'm just going to reword that. Difference from the majority culture, but a norm in the subculture. So is the support best described?
Yeah, this is a tricky one,
Yes.
Ryan, and I'll tell you why D is such a tricky answer choice, because it describes the situation.
Correct.
Like, D is true, like,
but it doesn't answer the question.
it doesn't answer this question.
Correct.
Because we're looking for the type of, like, being supported by members of, or having higher status, or being supported by members of your subgroup. What is that?
Yeah.
So it's some sort of capital. Like, I have that support, I have that status.
Yep.
And that status is a type of capital.
Yeah.
So now the question is it social or is it cultural?
Correct. So I'm going to get rid of D, because I had a feeling it was a red herring, because it was too like straightforward in the wording. I'm like, that's exactly what I just said this situation is, but it's not the support that it's asking.
Exactly.
So at least I'm down to 50-50.
Yes.
So
always a good thing.
Yeah, social capital to me seems like the right answer, just thinking about what social is, because this is my social group and I have status in this social group. I'm not sure what cultural capital is, so I'm going to go with B, just because the word sounds better in this situation.
Yeah. So B is our correct answer here. Cultural capital is more about things that will help you succeed, like a college education or speaking multiple languages. This is cultural capital.
In the majority culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in this case, this is not about the cultural capital of these individuals. This is about, like, their social ties and their social status. So that's more social capital. And here I want to highlight, like, quick things that you did that I think everyone should try to do. One, even if an answer choice sounds correct, double check if it really answers the question or not. So these sounds like it describes, like, part of that third paragraph, but it does not answer the specific question. Two, even if you don't know what a term means, you can still use your, like, common sense for a lot of these, like, foundational concept 9 and 10. Reproduction involves multiple generations. So social reproduction, you eliminate it based on common sense. Use that. So social reproduction is like how culture can go from one generation to the other. Yeah.
All right, rocking and rolling. I don't want to get too ambitious here, but we hopefully get a perfect passage here.
Yeah.
All right.
Number 10. A Latina woman in the circumstances described in the third paragraph is most likely attempting to avoid what phenomenon? All right, so we have a specific situation. I can see that you're looking in the last paragraph. Perfect. So what is she trying to avoid?
So again, without looking at the answers, someone who's trying not to be seen as a quote unquote loose woman, I mean, to me, that's a stigma. So you're trying to avoid stigma.
Exactly. And then look at the answer choices. Do you see stigma?
Stigma. Hey, answer choice D, stigmatization. So for the listeners, answer choice A looking glass self, whatever that is. B, a formal social sanction.
That's not too far from the correct one.
Yeah. So the one for me is formal, right? This is not a formal, like you're not getting a ticket and being sanctioned. But informally, right? Potentially. C, depersonalization. or destigmatization. So to me, answer choice D is the easiest. Can you go through the other answer choices and kind of give definitions of those? Do you have that?
Yeah, of course. Yes. So I'll start with stigmatization. Like this is exactly what the situation in the passage is, that we are looking into like society putting like censure on your behavior. So being perceived as a loose woman is a type of stigma, exactly what you predicted, and that's our correct answer. Looking glass self is the most distant of the answer choices from the current situation. This is how we perceive ourselves, and not how, or it includes how other people perceive us, but it's totally different concept of being labeled by society. So it's a way of how we build our self concept.
Okay.
Formal social sanction, this would be like you're breaking an actual law. So, and B is an attractive answer choice because other women described in the passage were actually afraid of formal social sanction, which would be the using drugs and prostitution at the beginning of paragraph 2. So poor minority women who live outside the law due to prostitution or drug use, then they will be trying to attempt a formal social sanction, like going to prison or having to do community service due to this. So this is where going back to the right place in the passage will give you the point, will help you avoid B and accept D.
Got it.
Yeah.
Ali, I think I went 7, 8, 9, 10. 7, 8, 9. 4 for 4 here.
Yeah.
All right.
Great job.
Perfect passage. I think it's one of my only ones on this half-leg, but I'll take it. Any big takeaways for you? Again, kind of similar to the opening question. When you end a passage, do you recommend just immediately kind of going to the next one? Do you recommend like double checking all of your answers first? What are your thoughts there?
I'm opposite to double checking your answers, because like when you review your answers from a place of anxiety of, I just finished the passage of, did I do well? Did it go well? Let me go double check.
Yeah.
You're in a state that encourages you to second guess yourself, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Have confidence in your predictions, have confidence in your questions. If there's something you genuinely struggled with as you're doing it, flag it, come back to it at the end of the section. But time to move on. Like this is a time test, and even though that the timing of the Psych section is not the most tight compared to Chem Phys or Cars, you still need to move on.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hopefully everyone watching this went 4 for 4 as well. And again, a reminder, everyone gets this half-link diagnostic for free at blueprintmcat.com.